So first of all, it's a pleasure to have you here in Milan. This is our new space, new gallery. It's incredible to open with you. We've had a long relationship, many years, but this is our first solo show in the gallery, and I want to thank you for this.
Great. It's so lovely to be here, and I feel really honoured to be opening your project in Milan. It's a brave and brilliant idea, and I think it'll be wonderful.
Grazie mille.
Prego.
I have a few questions for
Dimmi.
you. First question. So your work has a strong reference to classical art, and especially to Greek and Roman mythology. And now you opened up to Celtic mythology. Can you tell us why and what is the
Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the interesting things, at least for me as an artist with my work, was that when I started to make work in marble, I felt an energy and a desire to sort of refer to and relate to a lot of the classical sculptors of the 17th century, and it's sort of being in that shadow. It's very difficult to approach stone and marble without paying homage and sort of reference to that. But then as I started to realize and sort of understand myself as a sculptor, I felt that I didn't need to tie myself into that. So the works progressed not only conceptually but also physically as well. And as I grew with confidence with the stone and working with marble and investigating with other types of stones, then I started to really expand what I felt as an artist, which was really important. And that looked into sort of I started to look into myself more deeply, and that's where things around the idea of mythology and these gods and young gods, and then also the Celtic mythology, which is very much part of my culture as an Irish artist as well. And that has allowed me to really not only sort of push the work conceptually, but also it's given me a confidence as an artist to really sort of broaden my practice and really expand the works.
Very interesting. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So your work has always a strong sculptural knowledge of classical concepts, but at the same time it's very edgy, it's extremely contemporary, and it goes the other way from what is classical sculpture. And I love this piece because to me this piece gives me a very strong idea of what is your art. And can you tell me something about it?
Sure. Yeah, one of the things that I've been trying to do with my work and trying to achieve with my work is trying to break away from that idea of it just being work that's made around that classical language, because that's a sort of like constricting sort of way of working as an artist. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to take that language and expand on it and sort of contemporize it in a way. And a lot of the procedures in making a sculpture like this, taking it from the whole block, is around that classical idea. But what I want to do also is slightly be irreverent to that and not so precious around it. So I'm also using sort of more aggressive ways of attacking the stone and not being so precious about it and not being so sort of, in awe of the stone, and trying to create something that's beautiful but also aggressive and hard. And that's the idea behind a lot of these works, is that they have this beautiful sort of polished surface, but if you go a little bit deeper and a little bit beneath the surface, you see there's a darkness and more of a sort of like edgy, sensibility, which I think is really, really important rather than just surface-based work. So it's a multi-layered sort of experience for me as an artist working with stone and trying to.
It's more about the essence, right?
Right, and it's really that's
the character that each one of these has.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that just in terms of meaning and in terms of energy artistically for me is really important. But also I think for anyone that engages the work, if you're just dealing with the surface, it's very, very difficult to penetrate that. So allowing this combination of this classical methodology of producing the work combined with this sort of almost sacrilegious distrust of the stone and aggression towards it, that sort of brings this energy and sort of contemporarity. I
would like you to talk to us about a bit how your your show dialogues with the city, with the building. Well, we're located in actually the building that hosts La Vigna di Leonardo. Leonardo da Vinci used to stay here, we're in Milan. So it's extremely interesting to understand how you try to reference and somehow with the context of here. And this is one of my favorite works, so I'd love for you to talk.
Yeah, so coming to Milan to do a show in Milan is always a very difficult. I did a show recently in Florence that you helped organise in the Bardini Museum, but also coming to Milan to do a show is a very different sort of experience. And also coming in particular to this location, the gallery you've chosen and the location you've chosen is really, it's not sort of intimidating, but you can't help but hide away from the sort of presence that the building has and the history with Leonardo. And I think that that's what I wanted to be really careful about, how I sort of curated this show and in collaboration with the curator as well, to sort of try and do something that was very sensitive and very tender towards the building and the location, and rather than coming in and just making this big huge statement, actually being a bit sort of, you know, precious and gentle to the building, but also, you know, trying to sort of move away from the idea of it being just this sort of this big sort of sculptural gesture, something that's more sensitive and much more sort of authentic. So yeah, so it's a really lovely place to do a show, and really challenging.
It's also very interesting how you install the show, how we installed the show. I loved the fact that we enter in this bigger room and we have 3 large sculptures that somehow are dialing to each other, but at the same time none of them are looking at each other, so each one is detached. And then you go here where there's much I don't know, it gives me like a sense of, I don't know, holiness. It looks like it's so settled, right? But at the same time it's pretty busy, so I really love this.
Well, I really like the idea of having this room as sort of like a room that focused on not only the breakdown works, but some of my more significant works, and actually being really generous with the room and really generous with the space. And you know, this show, we could have done this show with maybe 2 works, or we could have done this show with like 20 works. It was that sort of idea of trying to make this space feel, you know, intense and energized, and also like not busy, but just really sort of like vital and energetic. And then the other space is more contemplative and more sort of introspective. So I think that they both work really nicely together.
Thank you. I mean, I'm super happy, and
great.
I think we did a great job. Kevin, new question. So your new series, Breakdown Works, has different iconography and uses different materials. Can you tell us something about it?
Sure, yeah. So the Breakdown Works was a series of works I did during the lockdown. It started before that, about 6 months before, but then the COVID situation arose, and that was a real period for me to sort of focus on my practice. And the Breakdown Works are a really interesting body of work because they're around the idea of this societal breakdown that happened during the sort of what's happening previously and what's happening now, but also they were a reference to sort of like a personal idea of a personal breakdown and where I am in my life at the minute. So they were really sort of like honest and raw series of works that ended up, I think I made 30 odd breakdown works, and I'm continuing to make them because it's a way of investigating the work, breaking down the sculptures, and really just trying to create something that's completely raw and visceral, but also really sort of poetic and honest and open. So the breakdown works they didn't even really start off as being works, but when I started to compose them and break down all of the materials and then bring them back together in these sculptures, I started to create these pieces that I was really impressed with and I thought were really beautiful.
And do you think that this will be a series that you will bring on, and will this become something new that we will see in your work?
Yeah, I have a feeling that this idea, this concurrent sort of like series of works that grow with me and mature with me and break down with me and that whole sort of thing, they will become like probably a part of my work for years, I feel, because they're so unlike the more statuesque and the more finished and the more sort of like I don't know what you could maybe say, established works. They have a sort of fluidity and a freedom and excitement, and as an artist, we're always trying to find that in our practice, that sort of excitement and expression.
It's also very interesting how you started to create these bases, which are somehow raw, but
Yeah.
at the same time very complex.
Yeah, the idea of the base is that what I wanted to do was I wanted to take the sculptures into this idea of creating the whole sculpture, the sort of one singular thing. So rather than like a sculpture on a grey base or a white base, I wanted to actually sort of incorporate the sculpture and the base together and create this whole uniform sort of work of art, this sort of whole sculptural object. And that has influenced into some of the other works in the show, some of the larger pieces that are actually uniform single pieces. So that all grew out of the breakdown works. So they're all really linked, but they have this sort of concurrent sort of style and energy that run side by side.
Very interesting. Thank you so much.
Sure.